I'm Christy. Today I want to talk about encountering independence with excitement and a bit of fear. I can't talk about moving AJ out without discussing the actual move and how he's adjusting since then. We moved AJ into his house just over a week ago. I chose to move him on a Friday after work. So I figured this would give us the whole weekend to make sure he was settled and ready for work Monday morning. In the end, it was a very wise move. I'd asked several times if we needed to plan to assemble any of the furniture. I was told that everything was ready for him except for the bed and bed frame arriving. With that confirmation, we decided to bring a few tools just in case. We were told that morning that they had left a few boxes in his room to give him the move-in feel. We packed up AJ's clothes and 2 plastic crates of his knickknacks that he wanted. Then we disassembled his new computer setup and got it ready to transport. We packed all of this into my car, left to pick him up from work, and headed to his new house. When we arrived at the house, his bed was set up and ready to sleep in. And there were a bunch of boxes lined up against one wall. That was it. We started going through the boxes to see what was there. We found a box that had 2 nightstands in it. My husband started putting them together. I continued opening boxes and unpacking non-furniture items. Once the nightstands were assembled, we looked at the other furniture boxes. We opened one box with dresser pieces in it, only to discover it was a wide dresser with 2 rows of drawers. I requested a taller single row dresser so that we could potentially put it in a closet. We set that aside while we tried to figure out how to fit it in the room. We then opened the box of desk pieces. This too was not the desk that we had put on our wish list. I requested a simple 47-inch desk with shelves on one side. I thought we could put AJ's books on these or use them for desk-related items. This desk was bigger and had angled side pieces that made it kind of like a corner desk, but not a true fit tight against the corner desk. We laid out the 3 desktop pieces on the floor and tried to figure out how we could fit it in the room. We soon realized there was no way for this desk to work in this room. By that time, I needed to leave to babysit some friends' kids. So we quickly boxed up the desk pieces, moved the dresser pieces to the garage to box up the next day, and tidied up the room enough for AJ to sleep in that night. Then we both left, promising to be back in the morning. After I got home that evening, my husband and I discussed what to do about the desk and dresser. We decided we needed to purchase these items for AJ in the morning so that he could feel settled, rather than waiting for the items to be ordered and delivered. We hoped to be reimbursed for these purchases, but we're willing to cover the cost ourselves if necessary. So Saturday morning, we arrived at AJ's house with a box of donuts to share with everyone present. It was a nice treat and a small way to celebrate this new transition for AJ. After AJ ate lunch, we took him shopping for new furniture items. Since our local IKEA store is 1 exit away from his home, we went there and began wandering the store looking for the missing pieces. About 2 hours later, or maybe even a little bit more, we were ready to check out. We'd found a desk chair, dresser, and some floating shelves for him. We loaded up and returned to his house. We started assembling the desk so that my husband would have a raised surface to work on for assembling drawers and similar items. This was fairly simple and straightforward, so it went together quickly. I needed to leave after the desk was assembled to return to babysit again. I left my husband as he began assembling the dresser. AJ headed home with my husband about 3 hours later with the dresser assembled. My husband needed a level to put up the floating shelves, and honestly, he was exhausted after all of that shopping and assembling. Sunday morning, we went to church and then out to lunch like we usually do. We then stopped at home and picked up a few more things and headed back to AJ's house. My husband began assembling the desk chair while I unpacked AJ's clothes and put them away in his new dresser and closet. We decided on homes for each item and got things put away pretty quickly. Next, we started in on the floating shelves. We quickly discovered that it worked best if I held the shelf in place while my husband screwed the brackets into the wall. It took a bit of time, but it wasn't too bad. I think the hardest part was holding the shelf in place long enough for my husband to get enough screws that I could let go. Once all 4 shelves were up, we unpacked his knickknacks and began picking up all the loose pieces in his room. This all went fairly quickly. The final piece was setting up AJ's computer. This too went quickly since we had already set it up at our house and had left much of the cords attached to the steering wheel stand. Once we set everything up and picked the room up, my husband took a few pictures to share with family. I've got one picture of his room over on the blog. You can find that at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in April of 2023. I then got the distinct feeling that AJ was gently kicking us out. He never said anything straight out, but I got this feeling that he was implying, okay, I'm settled. You can leave now. We said our goodbyes to everyone and headed out. All told, we probably spent about 15 hours settling AJ into his room. Not horrible, but a lot more work and effort than we anticipated on Friday afternoon before arriving. On Monday, paratransit arrived and took AJ to work as scheduled. I picked him up from work and took him to a doctor's appointment with the primary care doctor the house uses for all residents. The doctor prescribed the prescriptions AJ needed. Then he wanted me to take him back to the house, as opposed to the staff worker who was at the appointment with us. So we headed to his house. I dropped him off, chatted with his roommates for a few minutes, and then headed home. Tuesday morning, there was a big disconnect with paratransit. He ended up missing its arrival, so was unable to get to work. After several phone calls, we worked things out and got ready for the next day. We also dealt with a few issues inside the home. Nothing major, but a few tweaks and adjustments for AJ. Wednesday and Thursday, paratransit arrived later than usual, so AJ was late to work both days. Fortunately, his job trainer is incredibly understanding, and especially since this was all paratransit related. On Friday, paratransit arrived as anticipated, so I'm hoping they've worked out all the kinks on their end and things will run smoothly now for the next week and a half until he's done with his job. AJ came back to our house on Saturday and spent the night here so he could go to church with us. I took him back shortly after lunch, this time taking his books with us. After unpacking them and putting them on the shelves, he again was ready for me to leave rather than sticking around and spending time with him and his roommates. The most entertaining part of this weekend was listening to AJ talk about moving back to our house. He believes he'll move out of the rental, aka his new home, and back into our house. He wants to know when this will happen. Ironically, I think he's actually really happy in his new home. Right now, I'm chalking it all up to AJ being AJ and always wanting to look ahead to the next event. He always anticipates the next event. For example, when Papa and Nana would arrive, he'd be glad to see them and happy that they arrived safely. But later that day or the next day, he'd ask when they were going to leave. And then he'd talk about them leaving their whole visit. Every single time. And he does this with nearly every event he anticipates. So, for now anyway, I'm choosing to believe that's what's going on here. I think he's happy in his new house, but it's still new, and I think his desire for the known and expected is probably outweighing his desire for independence. But he wasn't sad to see me leave, so I'm taking that as a positive. My husband and I had a quiet week at home. It was weird only being the two of us. It's been almost 23 years since we've been alone in our house for any length of time. But it's a good weird. As much as I argue that I'm not old enough to be empty nested, I'm incredibly proud of both boys and the young men they've become. They're pursuing their own lives now apart from us. And while part of me misses them and wishes they were still living here, a bigger part of me loves watching them leave us and live their own lives. I've struggled with Sean leaving and still cry every time I say goodbye to him. My husband commented this week that I haven't cried over AJ leaving. I agreed, but admitted I've gotten close once. Part of the reason for the lack of tears is that I've still had to play mom to AJ every day since we moved him out. I've had more texts from him in the last week than in the past 2 or 3 months combined. I also had his doctor's appointment and an online meeting to help him find a new job this week, and he was home again this weekend. Admittedly, AJ will always need me to advocate for him. But I'm showing him how he can now ask questions of the house staff instead of asking me all of his questions. I'm showing him how he can be even more independent while still reaching for the assistance and support that he needs. This is definitely a bittersweet moment. Overall, I'm thrilled to watch AJ and Sean reach their fullest potential and become independent adults who thrive apart from me. There's really nothing more that I could want for either one of them. So my question for you this week is this. Have you watched your loved one gain more independence? How did it go? I'd love to hear about your experiences. You can leave me a comment below, or you can leave me a comment over on the blog. That's at www.havenofhopeforme.com. This originally posted in April of 2023. If you prefer, you can always email me at Christy, CHRISTY, at havenofhopeforme.com. I'm relieved the majority of the transition and move is complete so that I can continue to say that life is good and there is never a dull moment.